After the breakup of my 30-year marriage unexpectedly, I made two big life changing decisions. I decided to quit my job and to move abroad. And I just recently, a few days ago, returned from my first trip back home to the United States in DC. And this is what I discovered. Hey, I'm Lisa, and welcome to my channel where I talk about intentional living, specifically for Black women in midlife who are tired of postponing their wildest dreams. So, as far as my trip back to the US after living in Trinidad and Tobago for 3 months, that's not a lot of time, but I've never lived anywhere else for that long. So, um, I was first of all dreading the trip back. I didn't really want to go. It was bothering me on the inside. I had gone with someone to drop off a friend at the airport here in Tobago, and I was just dreading. Just the sight of the airport was making me feel yuck inside. I just was. It was just dreadful. So what I ended up doing, because the closer that the date was that I was going back, I just kept feeling stressed. So I decided to postpone the trip and shorten it. So I changed my airline ticket to something maybe 10 days later, which shortened the trip. I was going to be there for about 5 weeks, and now I was there for like three, maybe three and a few days, which was much better because I just was stressed out about returning to the United States, and I could not really put a finger on why I was feeling that way. I was just, it was unexplained. Like, this is the place where I had been all my life. And as far as DC, I'd been there for 30 something years. And I love that city. I still love it. But I just did not want to go home, even for a few weeks. But I had to return because Trinidad and Tobago's immigration laws require me to leave the country every 90 days because when I enter the country from the United States as a US citizen, I get like an automatic visitor visa, which is 90 days. And that means that in order to stay within the law, I have to leave either before or right at 90 days. And I can come back, but I have to leave the country. And so, or they have an option where you can request a waiver to stay in the country if you're not ready to leave. So this was my 90 day. 3 months was my 90-day period, and it was time for me to leave the country because I didn't request any waiver because I had so much I had to do. I had to go and pack up some more things that I had left behind, and tie up loose ends. I kind of left. I underestimated the complexity of moving abroad, and the time that I allowed myself to do it, it was hectic because I had to run around. So I was going back to take care of some of those things that I had left hanging and bring some more things that I had left behind. So finally that day comes and I fly back to the United States, and I was very happy to see my friends and family, and also the foods that I'm so used to, that I love, that I don't have access to here in Tobago. So Trinidad and Tobago, for people who don't know, is one country, two islands. Trinidad is the larger island. Tobago is a very small island. There's only about 600,000, no, 60,000 people here on this island. So it's small. And there's no major cities. There's just villages. They call them villages. So going back to the city, which I love. I love living in Washington D.C. I love city. I'm a city girl at heart. So I was, I got back and started getting food, going to different restaurants that I missed, and you know, different cuisines that I don't really have here. DC is a major, like, a cosmopolitan place for food, right? There's like every kind of food that I don't have here on Tobago, like Thai food and I really haven't seen Mexican food here, um, or Ethiopian food, West African food, or even Balkan food. I love Balkan food too. I didn't even get that on this trip, but anyway, all those things, all that to say, and then the produce. The produce is different here. There's not a lot of agriculture on this particular island, so everything has to be imported. So you know, it's not the same as growing tomatoes in your own backyard or at the local farm is different from the tomatoes that have to be shipped from somewhere in cold storage. It's not the same. So tomatoes here are horrible. So first thing I got back, I went to the farmers market and I got me some big, I don't know what kind of tomatoes they are. They're not brandywine like the ones I grew back in my garden, but they're good enough. They were juicy, somewhat sweet, not as sweet as my brandywines, but I love to have some nice bread and like a baguette and put some pesto, fresh pesto. I ended up buying the pesto because I didn't have the time and to be making my own. Normally, what I would have done is taken some basil from my garden and made my own delicious pesto, but I did the next best thing. So I had my bread and my pesto and my tomatoes, and I was in heaven with a nice glass of wine. That is one of my favorite summertime treats, and not only that, but the other produce, the fruits, the thing, stone fruits, the berries, and cold water, well, cold weather. Maybe not cold weather, but just not tropical produce, and I was loving it. But after about 5 days, I was ready to come back to home to Tobago. I was just like, okay, I ate the food, I saw my friends, and I was just missing the things that I had left behind here. Like, sitting here where I am out in the back of the house. It's not glamorous, but, there's palm trees and um, lots of birds singing and, you know, uh, roosters crowing and, even dogs barking. It's a nice sound and it's peaceful, and I especially missed the salty air from the sea since I live only 8-minute walk from the beach. I miss that salty air because they don't have nothing like that in Washington D.C. So I was doing the things that I came there to do, and it was kind of overwhelming because it was so much stuff that I had left, and it was all piled up, and I had to like sort through it because there's no way I could bring all that with me. So I had to sort through things. I had to get rid of some things, and I didn't have a lot of time to do it. So I went through and I was doing that while I was missing my sweet home Tobago. And then I just was like, you know what? That's the moment that I realized that not that I had made the right decision, because I already knew and I already established that it was the right decision to move here at this time in my life. But that was the time when the wondering of whether or not I'm going to in the future regret it, or in the future want something different. And I mean, that's no guarantee that I wouldn't, but that nagging feeling and that wondering just went away. I felt like, yeah, Tobago's my home. I did the right thing. It is where I want to be, and it's where I feel free and where I feel happy and joyful, really, to be honest. And that is a wonderful feeling to have. And I realized that a lot of people never get to that point. They just go through life, doing what they're supposed to do and never getting around to doing what it is that they want to do, especially before health fails, or something else happens where they just can no longer do those things. But I'm fortunate that the stars just lined up the way they did and made it possible for me to move here and live the life that I want, even though I have left behind some luxury type things that I don't have here. But despite those things, I still feel the same way. For example, I don't have, back in DC, I have a big, high efficiency washer and dryer, the fancy kind. And here in Tobago, I have this washer. I don't like it at all, but it washes clothes, so it's okay. I mean, it's brand new, but it doesn't act like it's brand new. But and then I don't have a dryer at all, so I just hang my clothes out to dry. And in the kitchen, I don't have a dishwasher. I have to wash the dishes by hand. And there are lots of different things that are just different and not as luxurious, because you have to realize the United States is the land of every freaking thing. And pretty much anywhere else in the world, doesn't matter where you go, is not going to have all that stuff. And you have to get used to it. And I have successfully gotten used to the fact that I don't have those luxuries. I mean, honestly, I had a little hard time with the food things, but as far as the comforts, I was able to get past it. And so, going back to the immigration thing, my return ticket from this trip would have been in September, which would have been the 90 days um, after I returned. I would have to leave back in 90 days, which would put me in September. And my original plan was I didn't want to go back in September, but I thought for sure it was just already decided that I would want to go back in November for Thanksgiving, because I always, for many, many years, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner, and I thought it would be awesome to just go back and, do my American shit. Well, as it turns out, I just started thinking, you know what? I don't really want to go back um, for Thanksgiving. For one thing, I found out that they actually celebrate Thanksgiving in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm like, wait, what? Why? Anyway, I didn't ask too many questions. Like, whatever, you celebrate Thanksgiving, okay, we can work with that. So I probably will just host Thanksgiving here, because I don't really feel like going back to the States in September or November or December. I really, really sat down and thought about it and decided that I don't want to go back to the US for the rest of 2026. Now, just think about it. That is huge for me, because I just didn't know that, before. So, what I'll have to do is request a waiver to stay in the country until I'm, you know, and then I don't have to go back to the US. I can go to a different island or go someplace else. And so I do plan on making one little trip somewhere. So I was honestly thinking about the fact that I may not return to my DC home until next June, because June is like the best time to go to DC. Like I said about the produce, and then there's all kinds of festivals, and the weather's generally kind of nice, and it's a nice time, because you would think I'd want to go back in the winter because it's hot here, but I really don't. I just will wait probably until next June. So maybe if I can work it, I'll just stay away from the United States for a whole year. And I don't feel any kind of way about it. I feel confident and I feel comfortable that I'm okay just staying here in Little Tobago, enjoying my life without going all the way back to the United States every 90 or even every 6 months or whatever. I'm just not really interested in going back with the Thanksgiving thing. And then just, the way that I feel, when I'm here. For example, the trip back to Tobago was crazy. Now, the trip going there is usually okay, but the trip coming back here is usually no, maybe I'm wrong. No, the trip going back there is the complicated one, because I don't end up there until after midnight. But this time, the trip back to Tobago was craziness, because I had to get to the airport at 3 a.m. So I did at 3 a.m. I'm at the airport, and this lady in the airport tells me she's demanding that I provide a visa for my trip to Trinidad. And I was like, visa? I don't have a visa. And I started to panic. I started to panic. I felt like I was going to have a stroke. But she told me to get in this long, slow moving line. So I did. And while I was in the line, I kept thinking, like, what could she be talking about? I told her, I'm coming I'm in the US. So, I'm a US citizen. Why do I have to have this? Come to find out, the problem was that When I changed my date to get there, I didn't change my return date. So it was ending up being more than 90 days. And if the stay is more than 90 days, you have to actually get permission in the form of a different visa besides the one that I have that I get automatically. So while I was in line, I got on my phone and I changed the date of that flight. And fortunately, I mean, I had to stay in that line anyway, but fortunately, it did the trick and they let me go just in the nick of time to get to the gate when they were about to board my section. They were already boarding the plane, and it was time for me to board right there when I got to the gate, which I was like, damn, I could have missed my flight because of this damn visa thing. So, anyway, I get on the plane. I'm like, whew, I'm feeling good and I'm glad that I get there. So we land in Miami, and somebody has a medical emergency on the plane. I don't know anything about what it was or whatever, but that meant that we had to stay on the plane while the emergency personnel came and got the person who was ill off of the plane. So that added more time. Then I managed to get, deplane and then go to my gate to fly to Port of Spain in Trinidad. And then we boarded the plane. We're sitting on the plane, and they're like, "Oh, but wait, we gotta change the tire." I'm like, change the tire? Are we driving? Anyway, they were saying it was going to take about an hour, so we had to deplane because they can't change the plane tire while you're on the plane. I guess when you jack it up, we'll go. Oh, 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 oh. So so we had to deplane. It ended up taking 3 whole hours for them to change the tire on the plane. So this is pushing me closer and closer to missing my flight from Trinidad and Tobago. So I take 3 flights. I have to go from DC to Miami, Miami to Port of Spain in Trinidad, and from Port of Spain to Tobago. So we finally land in Port of Spain, and there's barely enough time. I got to get through customs. I got to run through immigration, get there, and they had already closed the window of time, so I missed my plane from Trinidad to Tobago. But fortunately, I was able to catch the next flight, and thank God, because I was just gonna sleep in the airport. Um, I finally got on that and came home at we touched down at like 8:30 p.m. I was supposed to be here at 2 something p.m. So several hours later, and it was a grueling day, and it was a lot of luggage because I'm bringing all that stuff back. And I got you know you know back here, and I was so grateful and so happy. I wasn't even so tired. Normally I'd be like bonk, just out. But I stayed up for a couple of hours just talking to a friend, and finally went to sleep. And under normal circumstances, this type of harrowing experience would have had me exhausted for a day or two, but not this time. Coming back to Tobago just re-energized me and made me feel alive again. And so rather than sleeping in, I find myself on a party boat. There was an event, and it was a party boat, and I was out shaking my ass on a party boat instead of being exhausted and sleeping. So that was just another sign, that a sign of my soul being happy where I am. And because normally I would just be sleeping probably for a week. But no, I just got right back into it, and I'm feeling so grateful. Again, I'm always so grateful that I had this opportunity to move here to my favorite country in the world, Trinidad and Tobago. So I just hope that other people can get to experience this feeling of no more doubt. You're just happy and, excuse me, happy and content with the decisions that we have made, big or small, because sometimes, it may not be quit your job and move to a different country. It might be going into a different career. It might be, moving to a different city. It could mean anything. It doesn't matter. The point is, it is incentive to stop putting your dreams on hold. Because as Black women, we are taught that we have to take care of other people, we have to do this and that, even if it's not really true. I'm a whole empty nester, right? I don't have to take care of little children, but sometimes you just feel like you have to stay in a place because of that. And I just decided that I just need to make sure that I have the resources to fly back if I need to. Same thing with older people. I'm not a caregiver of the older people, but because they're up in age, you want to be around, at a drop of a hat to be able to hop on that plane and go back. That's not such a big ask in the big scheme of things of being able to live my dream. And so I'm just hoping that more of us are able to make these types of changes in our lives that bring this type of happiness. I can't be the only one who spent many a night laying in my bed wishing that I was someplace else. And finally, just the things came together and made it happen. So um, that's all for now. But think about it. Is there something that you are postponing because of real or imaginary barriers? Because even if the barriers are real, they can be overcome. You just have to think outside the box. So that's all for now. Until the next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.